It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade.
I took a pill in Ibiza to show Avicii I was cool. And when I finally got sober, felt 10 years older. Oh, fuck it, it was something to do. I'm living out in L.A. I drive a sports car just to prove I'm a real big baller, cause I made $1 million and I spend it on girls and shoes. You don't wanna be higher like me, never really knowing why you like me. You don't ever wanna step off that roller coaster and be all alone. And you don't wanna ride the bus like this, never knowing who to trust like this. You don't wanna be stuck up on that stage singing, stuck up on this stage singing. Oh, I know sad songs, sad songs.
And we got all of it focused on it, going to the moon. You know, it was interesting looking back that the Earth was inspiring. But, you know, you go to the Grand Canyon and look around. I find beauty looking out here in this, what you call the barren desert. I think you either have an innate belief in a spiritual being or a God, or you don't have. You don't have to go to the moon to feel that.
Well, but some people come back, and you know, Buzz Aldrin has talked a lot about how he had a rough time after the moon, and you could say
he had a very rough time. Buzz had a very difficult childhood, and Buzz, unfortunately, I don't think has recovered.
And I was a little apprehensive about all the public appearances and so forth. And I felt, gee, if I want to do it, fine. The second flight is going to do the same thing, maybe a little more. Why not go on that one instead of the first?
And yet, even at that early stage, you had doubts about your own ability, perhaps, to withstand the pressures.
I think so.
That going to the moon would mean.
No, not. It wasn't a question of whether I could stand them, could break. They were just undesirable.
You didn't want them?
No. The day we were to address Congress, we assembled in Washington in the offices of the House of Representatives, about a half an hour before we're scheduled to appear at noon. And several of the congressmen and senators were in this little anteroom, and they had to have their picture taken with you, and you felt like a body being pushed around to satisfy their desires. And then, of course, they bring out various things that they wanted signed for themselves. And gee, we went into the men's room before appearing in front of Congress to relieve anxiety and so forth. And we couldn't escape even in the men's room. A senator brought in some of his envelopes and asked us to sign them.
Are you bitter about anything which was imposed upon you?
In a way, but not to blame any individual or group of people. I think it was something that was natural in a new organization to not really know how to handle things and to perhaps not consider the feelings of people involved. I think that was a natural thing to happen. I just think that we're going to have to think a good bit more about the psychology of adjusting to circumstances.
The objects in this room represent much of the history of American flight. A lot of my life is represented here, too. July 1969, we landed on the moon. It doesn't seem so long ago now, but the space program is behind me now. A lot has happened since then. My life has certainly changed. When you're used to having most things go right, it's difficult suddenly to face anything going wrong. But that's what happened. My life began to come apart. Depression, something I thought only happened to other people, was happening to me. I had become part of that 1 in 10 Americans who was mentally ill. I thought I'd made some tough decisions in my life, but now I was facing one which was probably my biggest: the decision to seek professional help for an emotional problem. All of my education, my military training, my flight training, all of my training as an astronaut couldn't help me now. I had to reach out to someone else for help. I was afraid of the stigma, what it would do to my career. But I knew I needed help, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There is no overnight cure. After getting help, I made another decision. I made up my mind that I would share my experience for whatever good it might do for somebody else. I had learned the lesson that nobody is too big to seek professional help. Yes, a lot has happened since July 1969. But technology, which has done so much for our world, hasn't done it all. Ours is an even bigger job: to bring about those important changes in human services. It's a job which needs the best efforts of each one of us. I hope I can meet many of you as I travel around the country. In the meantime, thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you. July 1969, we landed on the moon. It doesn't seem so long ago now, but the space program is behind me now. A lot has happened since then. A lot has happened since then. But the space program is behind me now.
You don't see that on Earth, but you sure see that up in space in the zero-gravity atmosphere when you have a big mass like the spacecraft. And so when 12 rolled around, they said, let's devote a lot of time on 12 to find out how we can really work outside the spacecraft. And it just so happened that someone, I don't know who it was, said, well, how about underwater? Wouldn't that give you sort of an idea of zero gravity if we can make the astronaut neutrally buoyant? And a spacesuit will work just as well underwater as it will in space. So NASA rented a swimming pool in a boys' school up in Baltimore. Buzz and I went up there with all the crew, and we put Buzz in a spacesuit, got him in the water, made him neutrally buoyant. I had communication with him, and I sat on the side of the pool as if I was inside the spacecraft, and we went through some of the basics. We had a crude mock-up in the water itself, learning about working in space, learning about the proper hand holes and the proper toe holes to make sure that everything would work. And of course on 12, Buzz completed 3 spacewalks, about 5.5 hours, I guess. And, you know, everything was fine. Everything we were supposed to do, and no problem at all. So it was a major turning point in the ability to work outside a spacecraft.
Well, let me interrupt you there, because I want to go on with that. I've interviewed Cernan and Dick Gordon and people like that. They had a lot of trouble out there. What did you do differently? What did Buzz Aldrin understand that these Navy guys didn't understand?
Well, I think Buzz Aldrin was a scuba diver, and he had experienced working with currents that tend to move you in a direction that you may not want to move. And you have to go with the current, and you don't try and fight the current. You can get very tired pushing yourself against something, and I became convinced that even though your body has a big mass, if you want to move it, you move it very slowly and very delicately, and if you're in the right position, you just don't let that get disturbed, and you make sure that you have good leverage before you try and exert some kind of moment or twisting.
At the time, you feel very much, or I did feel very much on stage. 240,000 miles away, it doesn't seem like on stage, but when you know that millions of people are watching on television, listening to your voice, you're, in a word, apprehensive of not doing something wrong.
You'd do it all again?
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be trying moments if I did it again. But having gone through it once, I'd be a much smarter person.
And yet, Buzz, it almost destroyed you.
Right. but I think I'm a better man for having experienced it.
I only smoke weed when
Our memory of that actually differs little from the reports that you have all heard from those previous Saturn V flights.